wanted to talk to you something that's a little bit more dear to my heart than probably most people. Is I grew up in a family restaurant that was a drive-in. Well, the drive-in was an old A&W, and of course, it was in North Dakota. We were only like 6 miles from Canada, where I grew up at. So the drive-in was really only, producing an income for the family and such and the business for about 6 months out of the year, and then we had to rule up things and figure out what else to do for the rest of the season. But and now we're in the tax business. I've been in the tax business now for 20 years, and I always kind of liked and enjoyed the part about it is where it's a seasonal business. What are you going to do for the rest of the year, or do you need to do anything for it? But most of the times what you need to do is that you got to find something else to do for the remainder of the year. So having a seasonal business has its own particular set of obstacles, and probably one of the most difficult ones to start off with is staffing. So it can be particularly difficult to staff a office or whatever seasonal business that you have, because of the employee work pool that might be out there. Not all work pools have an abundance of people that want to work just a part of the year, and then you got to worry about what to do, because oftentimes what happens is that people will come to work for you and they say, okay, well, we got only like another year to, or not another year, but another month to go before the end of the season, and I need to jump ship, or I'm not going to make it to the end of your season because I'm out working for somebody else. When I get another job right now, I'm not going to be able to finish. So you get that lack of customer, not customer, but employee loyalty. And sometimes they don't get trained probably as well as you'd like to, because they're just they come in shortly before the season starts. You can only pour in so much training. It's not like you had 3 or 4 years of continual training on the job training to do. So that's difficult to do as well. And then you don't want to overstaff and you don't want to understaff, because what will happen is if you understaff and if you don't have enough of these seasoned employees that come in, then you don't have enough work. Um, well, I mean, you don't, you've got so much work, you should say, that you can't satisfy all the customers that you have. So you might not have enough people in order to get the work done. Vice versa, if you are in a seasonal business and you over employ, then you have too many people sitting around doing nothing. And you've still got to make sure that you're paying payroll to keep everybody happy. We just can't pay for people to be around, right? So then that can really hamper cash flow. So we either have too much work or too little work, but it's a difficult place to where you need to be. So I mean that's especially difficult when it comes down to staffing. Also marketing. Marketing can be tricky because oftentimes the seasonal businesses, you don't tend to want to spend too much of your money in the off season, where we call it the planting season. So by the time season rolls around, you've spent all your marketing dollars and you don't have anything to really push towards, that season. Like if it's 4th of July, you see the supermarkets, everybody's got everything for sale. They all have their events going on. Like Christmas is another one. It's all very immediate. Um, you can't spend 85% of your budgeting dollars in a 6 week period when there's 52 weeks out of the year. So you got to make sure that you're relevant all throughout the year. So you got to utilize your SEO, your CRM, maybe create some blogs, your social media, doing workshops and seminars. So that way you are relative and being in front of your customer. You do want to stay in front of your customer all throughout the year, but you don't want to pester your customer at the same time. So I don't want to be sending messages out every 2 weeks for 52 weeks out of the year if I only see the customer once a year. Maybe I only turn a sprinkler system on once a year, or I only do a landscape job over at their house once a year, or I only do their taxes once a year, or what it may be. It is good to be relevant, but don't overdo it at the same time. Um, One thing that's really been impactful as of recent and is weather. And believe it or not, weather has a very large part to do. Because if you have a short season and you might you might do 20% of your revenue in a 1 week period. And if you get a snowstorm or if you get a flood or if you get a tornado or something like that comes in and you're down from 1, 2, 3 days, that can make a major difference in if you're going to be a profitable business that year or not profitable, or if you're going to have growth or you're not going to have growth that year. I when I was up in North Dakota, one of the last years that I had the tax office up there, I woke up on April 15th, the last day of tax season. I looked out of my motel room as I was running the tax office out of Dickinson, North Dakota. And I didn't know, man. I mean, it was snowed in. I looked out the window and then the drift was up 3/4 of the way up the window. And there was no going in. There wasn't any coming out. Even the road equipment hadn't even gotten out there yet to start clearing the roads. I mean, it was so bad. I did manage to get out of the parking lot, get down the road, and I had purchased a newer vehicle, and it had. I mean, I had the snow tires on it, and I was able to put it in 4 low. And I got up to the tax office, and the tax office was buried. And so I had to shovel a walkway through the door, not just the sidewalk. I mean, it was all the way, like 3/4 of the way up the door and get a tunnel to get into the building. It was that bad. Okay, so there, I got to work. Okay, and it's probably 10, 12 o'clock by now or whatever. I got to work, I've shoveled the path, but now I still don't have any employees. So I had some employees that were in town, other employees they were out of town, but I had to physically, now the work trucks were going out there or what it may be, but I had to go get each employee and pick them up at their house in order to bring them back to the office in order to get them. So we pretty much was just a very skeleton staff that day. But as the day started warming up, people started moving around. The oil field workers started coming out, and they had the big trucks. They were going to get to where they needed to, and they needed to get their taxes done. It was the last day of tax season, so we went Iron Man until midnight that night. And if we hadn't taken the extra precautions, I mean, always be safe wherever you are. I mean, I feel safe. I've been in the military for 20 years as well. I've driven lots of trucks and I'm not very far away from warmth and I know how to take care of myself as I grew up in North Dakota. I'm not going to freeze and I'm in town and I've got communications and something goes on. You know, you can't sacrifice safety. I'm not saying to do that. But sometimes you just absolutely got to get to work on those storm days. So to me, that's a big one. Um, but also one of the last ones here is like forecasting demand. So if you're 6, 8 months between seasons or what it may be, and farmer's almanac is one thing. Like if you're in a landscaping or lawn mowing business or snow removal or what it may be, or we're in the tax business, for instance. What are those changes that have occurred over the last season that are going to impact your business? And how are you going to change your marketing strategy? How are you going to change your staffing to make sure that you hit it spot on come your seasonal business to where you make sure that you're being as profitable as you possibly can, that you have the staffing because if you don't hit it just right or you're not prepared for it, you're not going to be ready for it. Or if you see something that's out there and you say this is going to be very impactful and you overspend it as well and for your marketing and this night you just don't have the work for your employees to do, be very impactful. Maybe you still have the revenue, but boy, your overhead's going to be high this year, and you don't want that either. You always got to be as profitable as you possibly can. And then lastly, of course, is cash flow. I mean, I grew up in a farming community. I remember all the farmers, they go back to the banks every year and they need to buy seed money, what it may be. Depending on what kind of business that you're in, you might need seed money from year to year. And do you have a good relationship with the banker or whatever? Or do you have enough monies there to get you by from one season to the next season? So that's important. And it's not just for your business, but you might be just a mom and pop yourself. And how do you get from one season to the next? Uh, does your business? I use landscaping a lot of times, landscaping and lawn mowing services and such, because they'll use their trucks and their equipment for like snow removal. That's one of the more obvious ones. But how about those other less obvious ones if you're in a seasonal business? Like what do you do? Like I own a bait shop or something like that, or that's kind of smaller, what it may be. But there's all kinds of businesses that are out there, small, large businesses. But how do you get by from one season to the next? Are you going to be able to retain those employees from one year to the next? Because they might go out and find something else to do. Or do they go on unemployment? How do you keep them useful and how do you keep them employed? From one year to the next. And if you are a smaller outfit, it might be that maybe you just take a job for that 5, 6, 8 months while your seasonal business isn't up and running. And that way you don't really have to worry about so much overhead and so much of an outlay when you don't have revenue coming in. Maybe you can just go and do something, but you got to make sure that whatever you're getting into, that once your seasonal business is back up and running again or about to, that it's an easy transition. It's not fair to go out there and get a full-time job and tell an employer that you're going to be there for years to come when you own a seasonal business for 4 months out of the year. It's not reasonable. But anyways, I mean, there is a lot there. There are a lot of opportunities. Being in a seasonal business, it really contributes to its own different set of possibilities and difficulties in order to manage staffing, marketing, cash flow, all those types of things. And I've been into a lot of it the last 30 years, and but it's very relative out there. And if you have any questions, by all means, do reach out and be happy to help you. Have a good day now.